The night I begged for my place back, the whole pack looked at me like I was dirt on their polished floor. I should have stayed home. I should have kept my head down like I always did. But pride is a dangerous thing when you have nothing else left. Founders Night was supposed to honor strength, loyalty, blood. Instead, it turned into a reminder that I had none of those in the eyes of Silver Ridge. The hall glowed with candlelight and old money. Every family stood in their place. Every name mattered. Mine did not. I walked straight to the center anyway, my hands cold, my spine locked, and stopped in front of the council table. I want back on patrol, I said. My voice came out steady. That surprised me. A few people laughed before anyone even answered. Then Selena Cross stepped forward in her perfect red dress and cruel little smile. You, she said. Claire, you cannot even command a shift pulse, and you think you belong on patrol? The laughter got louder. Hot shame climbed up my throat, but I did not move. I can track. I can fight. I can do the job. Selena tilted her head like I had said something adorable. You are an orphan with no wolf, no rank, and no future. The only thing you can do is embarrass this pack. That one landed. Hard. I felt every eye on me. Every whisper. Every ounce of public pity. Then he spoke. Rowan Hale. Our alpha. Cold. Precise. Impossible to ignore. That is enough. The room went still. My heart did something stupid in my chest, because for 1 second, I thought he might actually defend me. Instead, his gaze pinned me where I stood. Claire, he said, voice flat as steel, leave the hall. Just like that. Not her. Me. The humiliation hit harder than Selena's words ever could. I looked at him, really looked at him, and hated how calm he was. Hated the power in his voice. Hated that I still felt it under my skin. Gladly, I said. I turned before they could see my eyes burn. Outside, the cold air cut across my face. I kept walking until the music faded behind me. That was when I heard the elders through the half-open side window. If the girl's blood wakes up, we lose control. Another voice answered, lower, sharper. Then make sure she never gets the chance. I stopped dead in the dark, my breath catching. They were talking about me. And suddenly getting thrown out of that hall did not feel like the worst thing that happened that night. It felt like a warning. I should have gone back to my room after what I heard outside the hall. Instead, I spent the next hour staring into the dark, replaying those words until they turned into a dare. If the elders thought I was dangerous, useless, and easy to erase, then I was done waiting for permission to matter. Before sunrise, I pulled on my jacket, strapped my hunting knife to my thigh, and slipped past the sleeping cabins toward the north tree line. The air was sharp enough to bite. Frost cracked under my boots. I did not have a wolf, not the way the others did, but I knew those woods better than most of the pack. If something was moving near our border, I would find it first. You want weak? I muttered under my breath. Watch me. At first, it felt like victory. I found tracks fast. Fresh. Uneven. A wounded rogue, or something pretending to be one. The trail cut deeper into the pines, then veered hard toward an abandoned hunting route no patrol used anymore. That was when my stomach turned. The woods were too quiet. No birds. No movement. No wind. Then a voice slid out from behind the trees. There she is. I spun, knife up, and 3 masked wolves stepped out of the shadows. Another moved behind me. Bait. I had followed bait. My pulse slammed so hard it made me sick, but I refused to back up. Come closer, I snapped. I dare you. One of them laughed. You are even easier to take than they said. They rushed me. I struck fast, cut one arm, shoved another back, but I was outnumbered and they knew it. One grabbed my wrist. Another reached for my shoulders. Panic hit hot and ugly. Not fear of pain. Fear of being dragged somewhere I could not fight my way out of. Then the forest exploded with command. Get away from her. Rowan. The words cracked through the trees like a gunshot. The patrol hit a second later, boots pounding, voices sharp, and the men around me broke formation. Fast. Rowan reached me first. His hand closed around my arm, hard enough to steady, not hard enough to hurt. Are you hurt? He demanded. I jerked free like his touch burned. Do not do that. His jaw tightened. Do what? I looked straight at him, chest heaving, pride bleeding all over the snow. Stage a rescue so I look helpless. For 1 second, something dangerous flashed in his eyes. Not softness. Not comfort. Something darker. Claire, he said, low and furious, you have no idea what you just walked into. And that was exactly the problem. Rowan did not let go of the situation. He marched me straight back to Silver Ridge with the patrol at our heels and anger rolling off him like a storm front. I hated that I could still feel the echo of his hand on my arm. I hated even more that part of me had been relieved when he showed up. By the time we reached the pack square, people were already staring. Of course they were. Nothing feeds a pack faster than scandal. Dean ordered the captured attackers searched, and one of the patrol wolves dumped a leather satchel onto the council table. A knife. A vial. And an old silver relic shaped like a broken crescent. The second I saw it, something in my chest pulled tight. What is that? I asked. No one answered me. Rowan stepped in front of the table too fast. Too late. Do not touch it, Claire. His voice cracked like an order. Which was exactly why I did it. I reached out on pure rage and slammed my hand over the relic before anyone could stop me. Pain tore through my palm. Hot. Blinding. Then everything changed. Light burst out of the silver crescent and shot up my arm in a line of fire. I gasped and stumbled back, but the mark kept burning, winding across my wrist like liquid moonlight. Around me, the whole square went dead silent. Then Rowan sucked in a breath like he had been hit too. I looked up. He had one hand braced against the table, his face gone hard and pale, and beneath the open collar of his shirt a matching glow flashed across his skin. No, he said, low and sharp. No. Not this. The elders rose so fast their chairs scraped across the stone. Dean stared between us like he had forgotten how to speak. Then Elder Miriam whispered the one thing that made my blood run cold. The bond answered. My head snapped toward her. What bond? She looked at Rowan before she looked at me. That was answer enough to make panic hit. Rowan straightened slowly, every line in him locked down again, but I had already seen it. Shock. Real shock. Someone explain this, I demanded. My voice shook anyway. Now. Elder Miriam lifted her chin. An ancient Alpha Guardian bond. Rare. Binding. Sacred. Sacred. I almost laughed. You mean prison with better marketing? My wrist still burned. Rowan's gaze cut into me, colder than ever, but underneath it I caught something worse than anger. Fear. Claire, he said, quieter now, step away from the square. I looked at the mark on my skin. Then at him. Then back at the crowd watching me like I had turned into something dangerous in under 10 seconds. My throat tightened, but I kept my voice sharp. I would rather die than belong to Rowan Hale. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. And somehow that silence felt even worse, because deep down I knew the real nightmare had not started when the relic burned me. It started when Rowan did not deny it. The silence after my words did not save me. It sentenced me. Elder Miriam recovered first, folding her hands like she was announcing the weather instead of the ruin of my life. Until the bond stabilizes, Claire Whitmore will remain under Alpha protection. I stared at her. No, my voice came fast. Sharp. You do not get to decide that for me. Another elder cut in before she could answer. The bond is older than your opinion. A few people in the square actually nodded. That was the sickest part. They looked relieved. Not because I was safe. Because I was contained. Then Selena stepped forward, her smile sweet enough to rot teeth. How convenient, she said. The girl with no rank touches one relic and suddenly she has a reason to stay near the alpha. The crowd stirred. I felt the heat of shame crawl up my throat again. Say it clearly, I snapped. You think I planned this? Selena gave me a slow, pitying look. I think girls like you always find a way. Before I could answer, Rowan's voice cut through the square. Enough. He did not raise it. He never had to. The pack obeyed silence when he spoke like that. He turned to Dean. Move her to the Alpha House. Tonight. My whole body went cold. You do not get to move me anywhere. Rowan finally looked at me. Really looked at me. His face was unreadable. His eyes were not. Too hard. Too controlled. This is not a request, Claire. The words hit like a slap. I laughed once. Bitter. Of course not. Why start now? Nobody defended me. Nobody even looked uncomfortable. They just watched while my life got decided in public by people who had spent years pretending I barely existed. I should have fought harder right there. Maybe I wanted to. Maybe I was just too tired. By the time I reached the Alpha House, the moon was high and my rage felt heavy enough to break bones. Rowan followed me inside and closed the door behind him. That sound did something ugly to my nerves. I spun on him before he could say a word. What do you want from me? I demanded. A body in a locked room? A girl on a leash? A living shield for whatever secret this bond is hiding? His jaw tightened. I want you alive. I took a step closer, shaking with anger I could not hide anymore. I hate you more than I did this morning. For the first time all night, something in his expression shifted. Small. Dangerous. Human. Then it vanished. Your feelings are irrelevant, he said. Your survival is not optional. He turned and walked out, leaving me alone in a house that felt too large, too quiet, too much like a cage. I stood there breathing hard, staring at the door he had shut between us. And when I finally tried to cross the room, a sharp pain sliced through my wrist so suddenly I nearly dropped to my knees. The pain hit so fast it stole the air from my lungs. 1 second I was standing in the middle of the Alpha House, furious and alone. The next, my wrist burned like someone had pressed a hot iron straight into bone. I grabbed the edge of the table, but my knees still buckled. No, I hissed through my teeth. No. I am not doing this. The mark flared brighter anyway. I tried to force myself toward the front door on pure stubbornness, and the pain doubled so hard my vision blurred. That was when Rowan came back. Of course he did. He crossed the room in 3 strides, caught my elbow before I hit the floor, and steadied me against him like this had always been inevitable. Do not fight the line, he said. His voice was low. Controlled. Too calm for what was happening to me. I shoved at his chest, weak and angry and humiliated all at once. Get off me. His hand tightened just enough to keep me upright. If you keep forcing it, you will make it worse. I hated that he was right. I hated even more that my body knew it. He guided me to the couch while I fought every inch of the way, then crouched in front of me and took my wrist. The mark pulsed once beneath his fingers. Heat shot up my arm, but this time it shifted. Less sharp. More like pressure. Like the bond had recognized him and eased. My breath caught. What are you doing? I asked. Anchoring the pain. He did not look up when he said it. Listen carefully. When it spikes, breathe through it. Do not run from it. The bond punishes resistance. I let out a bitter laugh. That sounds romantic. His mouth flattened. It is not supposed to be. For one reckless second, the room went quiet. No counsel. No pack. No Selena. Just the heat of his hand over my wrist and the awful fact that he was the only thing making the pain stop. I looked at him and saw something I had not wanted to see. Not pity. Not triumph. Concern. Real concern. It messed me up instantly. Then he stood and ruined it. Dean was waiting in the doorway, and Rowan did not realize I could still hear him. I do not need feelings complicating this, he said. I need the bonds stable. Something cold slid into place inside me. Of course. Of course that was all this was. I stared at the fading mark on my wrist and swallowed the last weak, stupid flicker of relief before it could grow into hope. When Rowan turned back toward me, I had already rebuilt the wall. Next time, I said, voice flat, do not pretend this is about me. He went still. I did not wait for his answer. Because if I stayed there one more second, I might have asked the only question I could not afford to ask. Why did his touch feel like safety if I hated him this much? Morning came sharp and gray, and Silver Ridge acted like my life had not just been torn open. The pack house buzzed before breakfast. Voices. Boots. Orders. I stayed near the upstairs landing long enough to hear one name drift through the hall. Marcus Voss. I did not know him personally, but I knew the reputation. Alpha of Black Hollow. Territorial. Charming when he wanted something. Cruel when he did not have to pretend. By the time I reached the main room, he was already there, leaning against Rowan's council table like he owned part of it. Tall. Immaculate coat. Smile too smooth to trust. His gaze landed on me and sharpened instantly. So this is Claire Whitmore. I stopped cold. Rowan moved half a step, subtle but deliberate, putting himself closer to my side without touching me. Marcus noticed. Of course he did. Interesting, he said. I heard the bond rumors were exaggerated. Rowan's face went still. They are not your concern. Marcus smiled wider. Anything tied to ancient law concerns every alpha in the region. The room tightened around that sentence. I felt it. Politics. Ownership. Men discussing my life in the language of territory. I crossed my arms and made my voice hard. Then let me save you time. I am not a prize, and I am not transferring anywhere. Marcus laughed softly. That fire explains a lot. Then he looked at Rowan, not me. If you cannot control the bond, there are older remedies. Some of them involve reassignment. The word made my stomach turn. Reassignment. Like I was livestock with paperwork. Rowan did not raise his voice. He did not have to. Finish that thought carefully. Marcus straightened, still smiling, but the air between them turned mean. I came as a courtesy. Your council will not ignore this forever. A white wolf line tied to an unstable alpha bond? That is not a private inconvenience. That is a regional threat. White wolf. The words hit me before I could stop them. My pulse kicked hard. Rowan's jaw locked. Too late. Marcus saw everything. He did not tell you? Marcus asked, and now he was looking at me again. That is almost rude. I took one step toward him. Tell me what? Rowan cut in instantly. Enough. Marcus ignored him. I came for diplomacy, he said, pushing off the table. But before I go, you deserve one truth, Claire. He paused just long enough to make the whole room listen. Rowan Hale has lied to you about your father for years. The silence after that felt like the floor dropping out from under me. I turned to Rowan so fast my vision blurred. He did not deny it. He just stood there, too controlled, too silent, and suddenly that felt worse than any confession. I did not confront Rowan. Not right away. That was the first thing I learned from living around power. If a man like Marcus Voss dropped a secret and a man like Rowan Hale refused to deny it, charging straight at the truth only got you lied to faster. So I waited. I watched. And that night, when the Alpha House finally went quiet, I slipped out of my room and headed for the old records wing behind the council offices. My father used to tell me that if people feared a story, they buried it in paper first. The archive room smelled like dust, cedar, and old lies. I moved fast, running my fingers over cracked binders until I found what I needed. Whitmore. Hale. Treaty revisions. Bloodline registries. Half the pages were missing. The rest looked cut apart on purpose. Of course, I muttered. Why hide one secret when you can hide 10? Then I found it. A ledger entry, buried under an outdated patrol index. White Wolf lineage. Restricted by council order. My pulse slammed. I read the line twice. Then a shadow shifted behind me. I spun so hard I nearly dropped the book. Dean stood in the doorway, arms crossed, expression unreadable. You are not supposed to be here, he said. I clutched the ledger tighter. Neither are missing records. His eyes flicked to the page. For one long second, I thought he would take it. Instead, he stepped inside and shut the door. If you are going to dig, he said quietly, learn the difference between what was lost and what was erased. I stared at him. Did Rowan know? Dean did not answer directly. He never did. Your father fought harder than most people remember. That was not enough. Fought who? I pressed. The council? Rowan's father? Rowan? Dean's jaw tightened. Some truths arrive out of order for a reason, Claire. I hated that answer on sight. I opened my mouth to push harder, but the room changed first. A strange smell. Bitter. Sharp. Smoke. Dean turned toward the back shelves just as a thin gray ribbon curled up the wall. Move, he snapped. The next second, flames licked across a row of old files like someone had been waiting for me to get close. Heat punched through the room. Paper blackened. My chest locked. Someone had not just hidden the truth. Someone was still protecting it. And this time, they were willing to burn the whole archive to keep me from reading one more line. Smoke ate the room in seconds. One shelf went up, then another, and the heat turned vicious fast. Dean grabbed my arm and shoved me toward the door, but a beam crashed down from the ceiling and split the archive in half. Sparks burst across the floor. He swore and shoved me back. Find another way out. Another way out. In a room someone had clearly set to burn. I wrapped my sleeve over my mouth and pushed through the back corridor, half blind, half choking, one hand dragging along the wall. Every breath tasted like ash. Every step felt slower than the last. Then the smoke thickened so badly I missed the turn and slammed into a locked side gate. Panic hit hard. Stupid. Hot. Immediate. I rattled the handle anyway. Open, I coughed. Come on. The door did not move. Neither did the fire behind me. For one ugly second, all I could think was this is how they do it. Not in public. Not with witnesses. Just neat enough to call it an accident. Then I heard it. A crash. Heavy. Violent. Close. Claire. Rowan's voice tore through the smoke before I saw him. The next second, the side gate exploded inward and he came through the flames like force given a face. He reached me fast, stripped off his coat, threw it around my shoulders, and caught my face between both hands. Look at me. I did. I hated that I did. Can you walk? I nodded once. He did not trust it. He hauled me against him and drove us through the opening while smoke curled around us like it wanted one last try. Outside, cold air hit my lungs so hard it hurt. The square was already full. Council members. Patrol wolves. Pack families whispering into the dark. Rowan set me down, turned, and his voice went ice cold. Seal the record's wing. Nobody enters without my order. Elder Miriam stepped forward. Alpha, this may have been an accident. Rowan did not even look at her. No, that one word landed like judgment. Then he finally faced the crowd, one hand still at my back, and something in his expression made the whole square go silent. Listen carefully, he said. Any threat against Claire Whitmore is a threat against me. The whispering stopped. Just stopped. I felt every head turn toward me. Shock. Suspicion. Fear. It should have felt like safety. Instead, it felt like being claimed in front of the entire pack. Rowan looked down at me once, brief and unreadable, then back at them. Find who did this. The bond mark on my wrist throbbed under his hand, warm and alive, and I could not tell which thought hit harder. That someone wanted me silenced badly enough to burn the truth with me in it. Or that Rowan Hale had just made me untouchable in public, and I still had no idea why. That night, sleep did not feel like rest. It felt like trespassing. I lay in the dark at the Alpha house with Rowan's public warning still ringing in my ears. Any threat against Claire Whitmore is a threat against me. The whole pack had heard it. I should have felt safer. Instead, I felt marked twice. Once by the bond. Once by him. Sometime after midnight, the pain in my wrist faded into a dull pulse, and the room went wrong. Too cold. Too still. Then the dream hit. I was standing in snow that came halfway up my boots, staring at a tree line washed silver by moonlight. Blood streaked the ground ahead of me. Not fresh. Not bright. Old. Dark. My chest tightened before I even understood why. A man was there. My father. He turned like he had heard me, but his face blurred at the edges, slipping every time I tried to see him clearly. Another shape stepped into the clearing. Taller. Broader. Male. I knew the silhouette before my mind let me say the name. Rowan. Younger. Fiercer. Covered in snow and guilt. Run, my father said, but I could not tell if he was speaking to me or to him. The wind rose. Everything blurred. Then my father dropped to one knee, and Rowan moved toward him. Too fast. Too late. I woke with a gasp and my hand over my mouth, like that could shove the image back where it came from. The room was dark, but the panic was real. My pulse hammered so hard it hurt. A knock sounded almost immediately. Rowan. Of course. The bond must have carried the shock straight to him. He stepped inside before I answered, eyes sharp, voice low. What happened? I backed away from him so fast my calves hit the bed. Do not touch me. He stopped. Claire. I pointed at him with a shaking hand. Were you there? He frowned. Where? My throat tightened. The night my father died. He went very still. Not confused. Not offended. Still. That silence did more damage than any lie could have. Answer me, I snapped. His jaw locked. You saw something through the bond. I saw you. The words came out raw. I saw you standing over him. For one brutal second, I thought he might finally tell me the truth. Instead, he said the one thing that made everything worse. It is not that simple. I laughed, and it sounded close to breaking. No. Of course not. Nothing with you ever is. He took one step forward. I took one back. Claire, listen to me. I shook my head before he could say another word. Because if he tried to explain now, I might hear something I could not survive. Because if that dream was real, then the alpha I was bound to was not just the man I hated. He might be the reason I started hating the world in the first place. By sunrise, I was done waiting for Rowan Hale to decide how much truth I could survive. I packed light. Jeans, cash, my father's old compass, and the address of a witch 2 counties south who was rumored to break bonds no one else could touch. Maybe she was fake. Maybe she would take one look at me and laugh. I did not care. I would rather chase a rumor than stay in a house with a man who looked me in the eye and said, "It is not that simple," like that excused anything. I slipped out through the service road just after dawn, head down, pulse hard, every step feeling like theft. The farther I got from the Alpha house, the easier it was to breathe. Just make it to the highway, I told myself. Just make it out. For 20 minutes, it almost worked. Then the trees went quiet in the exact same way they had before the first ambush. My body knew before my mind did. Wrong. I stopped on the gravel shoulder and turned slowly. 3 wolves stepped out from the pines. Then 2 more. Different faces. Same intention. One of them smiled. "You run often, Claire?" My stomach dropped. They knew I had run. Not guessed. Knew. "Who told you?" I asked. He shrugged. "Does it matter?" They moved in. I backed up, knife already in my hand, rage pushing harder than fear. It matters to the person I kill first. It was a brave line. A stupid one. I never got the chance to use it. A command cracked across the road so hard it felt like the air split open. Enough. Rowan. He hit the scene with patrol wolves at his back and murder in his eyes, the kind that did not need raised voices to feel dangerous. The men around me scattered fast, but not before I caught the truth burning through me. Someone inside Silver Ridge had given them my route. Rowan reached me last, not first, like he had forced himself to secure the perimeter before touching me. That should not have mattered. It did anyway. "Were you trying to get killed?" he demanded. I laughed once. Bitter. "You sound disappointed I failed." Back at the pack, he did not argue. He went straight to the council chamber and, in front of everyone, issued temporary alpha restrictions on my movement until the leak was found. The room blurred red at the edges. "You cannot cage me because someone else betrayed me." Rowan's face stayed carved from stone. "I can if it keeps you alive." The fury that rose in me was so sharp it almost felt clean. I stepped closer, looked straight into the eyes of the man who kept saving me just to take something else away, and said the only truth I had left. "I hate you. More every time you save me." He did not flinch. That was the worst part. He just held my gaze and let the cage close anyway. The next morning, the council turned my humiliation into a schedule. Elder Miriam stood at the center of the training yard with her hands folded and her voice full of that same dry authority I had learned to hate. "The bond is unstable," she said. "And Claire Whitmore is becoming a target because she cannot control what she carries." Becoming? That part almost made me laugh. I had been a target long before they found a sacred word for it. Rowan stood beside her, arms crossed, expression unreadable. The whole pack had gathered just far enough away to pretend they were not watching. "So what now?" I asked. "You lock me in the Alpha house and call it protection forever?" Miriam looked at Rowan, but he answered first. "No. You train." The words hit harder than I expected. "With who?" I asked, even though I already knew. His gaze did not shift. "With me." A few whispers broke across the edge of the yard. Of course they did. The hated girl. The Alpha. The bond. The scandal practically fed itself. I stepped onto the packed dirt and lifted my chin. "Fine. But I am not here to make your bond easier. I am here because I am done being prey. Something flickered in Rowan's face. Approval, maybe. It disappeared too fast to trust. He tossed me a practice knife. I caught it one-handed. Again, he said. You have not even seen me move yet, I shot back. I have seen enough. That got under my skin exactly the way he meant it to. I came at him fast. He blocked. I adjusted. He countered. Every move I made hit his control like water hitting stone. Infuriating. Clean. Merciless. Within minutes I was breathing hard and furious at how easily he read me. You lead with anger, he said. I lead with reason. I lunged again just to wipe that calm off his face. He disarmed me in one turn and caught my wrist before I hit the ground. Heat flashed through the bond mark. My body reacted before my pride could stop it. Rowan's grip tightened once, steadying, not claiming. Powerless people do not survive pack politics, Claire, he said quietly. That is what you still do not understand. I jerked free and glared at him through the pulse in my skin. Then maybe stop treating me like I am already beaten. For the first time that morning, his eyes sharpened in a way that felt personal. Then prove I am wrong. The yard went silent around us. Good. Let them watch. Let them whisper. I bent, picked up the knife, and looked him dead in the eye. If they were going to drag me through hell anyway, then I would learn how to fight like something hell should fear. Training got worse before it got better. That was Rowan's idea of mercy. 3 days after he told me to prove him wrong, he pushed me harder than before. No audience this time. No counsel. Just the private edge of the east field, where the trees blocked most of the wind and none of the shame. Again, he said, circling me with that same maddening calm. You hesitate when the bond surges. I wiped sweat from my mouth and glared at him. Maybe because the bond feels like it is trying to tear me open. His eyes stayed on mine. Then stop fighting the pain and learn its rhythm. I hated that answer. I hated that he might be right. I came at him fast anyway, knife low, anger high. He blocked, turned, and caught my wrist before I could recover. The mark flared so hard my knees almost gave out. My breath snagged. The whole world tilted. Rowan's expression changed instantly. Claire. Not cold this time. Sharp. Focused. Breathe. I tried. I failed. The pulse under my skin turned brutal, hot enough to make my fingers shake. He stepped closer without asking, one hand bracing my waist, the other flattening over the bond mark. Heat rushed through me. Not pain exactly. Not relief either. Something stranger. Deeper. Like my body recognized his before my mind could reject it. Look at me, he said. I did. That was my first mistake. The second was noticing how carefully he held me, like I was something dangerous he refused to break. I am not taking advantage of this, he said quietly, reading the tension in my face before I spoke. I know, I whispered, and that truth landed harder than I wanted. The pulse eased. My breathing steadied. For one reckless second, neither of us moved. His thumb shifted once against my wrist. My heart answered like a traitor. Then Selena's voice cut across the field like a blade. Wow. So this is what alpha training looks like now. I jerked back so fast the ache returned. Selena stood at the fence with 2 pack girls behind her, all 3 of them smiling like they had just caught me begging. Careful, Claire, Selena said sweetly. If you keep collapsing into his arms, people might think the helpless act is part of your strategy. Shame hit hot. Immediate. I turned on Rowan because it was easier than letting her see what she had touched. This is exactly why I said no to this, I snapped. You keep putting me in positions that make me look weak. Rowan's jaw tightened, but he did not defend himself. He just looked at me with that hard, unreadable face, while the bond still burned between us like a secret I was already starting to lose control of. 2 nights after Selena caught Rowan holding me together, she made sure the whole pack got a cleaner version of the story. The charity gala at the Ridge House was packed wall to wall with polished smiles, old money, and people pretending loyalty was not just another trade. I only came because the bonds still punished distance, and because Rowan had said, "Stay near me tonight." Not please. Not trust me. Just another order dressed like strategy. The second I stepped into the room, I felt it. Eyes. Whispers. Curiosity sharpened into judgment. Then I saw Selena at Rowan's side in silver silk, graceful and composed, exactly where a future Luna was supposed to stand. My stomach dropped before I could stop it. I hated that reaction. I hated that he saw it. "Do not read into this," Rowan said under his breath as he passed me a glass of water, "not champagne." "Then stop giving me scenes that look exactly like what I should read," I shot back. He did not answer. That was my first warning. The second came when Elder Miriam raised a glass and praised stability, image, and strong alliances. Selena smiled like the words had been written for her. Then she turned to me. Of course she did. "It is wonderful Claire could join us," she said, loud enough for the nearest circle to hear. "Silver Ridge has always believed in charity." A few people laughed. Soft. Cruel. My face went hot. "Say it plainly," I said. "You think I am a burden in heels." Selena's smile never moved. "I think some girls mistake protection for importance." That one landed where she wanted. Every eye in the room slid to Rowan. He could have ended it in one sentence. One. Instead, he stood there in that brutal alpha stillness, jaw tight, gaze unreadable, and said nothing. The humiliation hit harder because part of me had expected better. Stupid. Reckless. Weak. I set the untouched glass down before my hand could shake in front of them. "Enjoy your perfect picture," I said, looking straight at Rowan this time. "You clearly already chose the frame." Then I walked out before the room could see how much it cost me. Cold air slammed into me on the back terrace. Good. I needed something sharp. I gripped the railing and told myself I was done caring what silence from Rowan meant. Then footsteps scraped behind me. Male. Drunk. Too close. "Alpha's little secret looks lonely," one voice said. I turned slowly, pulse kicking hard, and realized the night was not done humiliating me yet. The 3 men on the terrace smelled like whiskey, bad judgment, and pack privilege. One of them stepped closer, smiling like the whole night had handed him a private joke. "You ran out before the Alpha could finish ignoring you?" he asked. The others laughed. Soft at first. Then meaner when I did not answer. I kept one hand on the cold iron railing and squared my shoulders. "Walk away." My voice came out flat. Good. I wanted sharp, not shaken. The tallest one tipped his head. Or what? He looked me up and down like I was a story he had already decided how to tell. "You going to cry to Rowan again?" That one burned. Not because it was true. Because part of the pack wanted it to be. I stepped off the railing and met his stare. "No," I said. "I am going to remember your face when this night turns on you." His smile slipped just a little. Then his hand caught my wrist before I could move past him. Not hard. Not enough to leave damage. Just enough to remind me what men like him thought they could do when a woman had already been publicly lowered. Rage hit first. Fear came right after, hot and humiliating. "Let go." He leaned closer. "Maybe if you stopped acting like the Alpha's secret, people would stop treating you like one." The air changed before I saw Rowan. It always did. One second the terrace was full of cheap courage. The next it went dead still. "Take your hand off her." Rowan's voice did not rise. It cut. The man dropped my wrist like it had burned him. Rowan crossed the terrace in 3 strides, not looking at me first, which somehow made it worse and better at the same time. He looked at them. Names, he said. None of them answered. Dean appeared behind him, silent as a threat, and suddenly all three found their voices at once. Excuses. Stammering. The oldest one tried, Alpha, we were just joking. Rowan's face did not change. Then you have a cruel sense of humor and a weak understanding of boundaries. He turned and walked them straight back into the ballroom, where the music stopped the second people saw his expression. He did not wait for privacy. That was the point. These men harassed Claire Whitmore under my roof, he said, every word clean and cold. They are stripped of patrol rank pending council review. Gasps. Silence. Shock. Selena went pale for half a second. Elder Miriam looked furious that he had done it publicly. Good. Let them all choke on it. Then Rowan said the part that hit harder than punishment. Claire answers to no one's insults. No one touches her. No one corners her. If you test that line again, you answer to me. The room froze around us. Later, when the crowd finally broke and the men were dragged away, I found him alone in the side corridor. My pulse was still uneven. My pride was worse. You know what the sickest part is? I asked. Rowan turned, jaw tight, eyes still carrying the cold from the ballroom. Tell me. I laughed once. Bitter. You always save me after they make me bleed in public. His stare held mine. Hard. Unreadable. Because daylight gets people killed, he said. And just like that, my anger shifted shape. Because that was not an excuse. That was a warning. The next morning, Rowan's warning still echoed in my head. Because daylight gets people killed. I should have let that line sit. I should have let fear do what it was designed to do and keep me quiet. Instead, it made me hungrier. By noon, I found Dean behind the training barn checking patrol reports like nothing in Silver Ridge was breaking under the surface. You said some truths arrive out of order, I told him. Then give me one in the right order for once. He looked up slowly. Tired. Careful. Like a man who had spent too many years standing too close to secrets. For a second, I thought he would refuse. Then he pulled a folded page from inside his jacket and held it out. This was hidden in your father's old effects, he said. He did not trust the council. He barely trusted anyone by the end. My fingers shook when I took it. The paper was worn thin. My father's handwriting hit me harder than I expected. I knew that slant. Those blunt strokes. The first line nearly stopped my heart. If anything happens to me, Claire must never be handed to the council. I read faster. There it was. Not Rowan. His father. Alpha Gideon Hale broke the oath first. My breath caught so hard it hurt. No, I whispered, staring at the words like they might rearrange themselves. Dean did not interrupt. He just stood there and let the silence work. I looked up at him, pulse kicking wild. So Rowan did not do it. Dean's face gave nothing away. I did not say he was innocent. I said the first betrayal was not his. That landed exactly where it should have. Deep. Ugly. Complicated. I looked back at the page. My father had known. He had feared the council more than open enemies. He had written like a man trying to save me from people inside my own home. And Rowan had stayed silent all this time, carrying blame that might not even belong to him. That should have softened something. It did not. Not yet. It just changed the shape of my anger. I folded the page carefully. I need to talk to him. Then do it fast, Dean said, suddenly sharper. Because if someone else learns what is on that paper, it becomes a target. I barely had time to turn before a hand snatched the page clean out of my grip. I spun hard. Elias. My uncle stood 3 feet away, smiling like he had just picked up a dropped dollar. "Well," he said, glancing at the handwriting, "that looks important." My whole body went cold. "Give it back." Elias folded the page once, neat and casual, and slipped it into his coat. "Not until I know why half this pack is suddenly terrified of your name." And just like that, the truth was no longer something I had found. It was something someone else could use. Elias did not keep the stolen page to himself for long. By evening, he was standing in the council chamber like he had every right to be there, one hand braced on the table, the other holding my father's words like a weapon he had already decided to misuse. I stopped in the doorway so fast the guards behind me nearly hit my back. Rowan was already inside. So was Elder Miriam. Dean. Half the council. And Elias, smiling like a man who had finally found his price. "There she is," he said. "The girl at the center of all this trouble." I felt the room tighten around me. "Give me the page," I said. Elias ignored me. "As Claire Whitmore's last living guardian, I am formally asserting familial authority over any decision related to her bond, her housing, and her future placement." The words hit me like a door slamming shut. "No," I snapped. "You do not get to walk back into my life and call that protection." Elias spread his hands like I was being unreasonable. "Claire, I am trying to save you from becoming a political pet." Rowan moved before I realized he would. Not fast. Not loud. Just enough to put steel into the room. "You have no standing over her while she is under alpha law." Elias turned to him with a laugh that held no warmth. "That is convenient. The same alpha law keeping her in your house. Under your watch. Under your control." I could feel my pulse in my throat. Because that was the part one hated most. He was twisting the truth, but not inventing it. Elias lifted the stolen page slightly. "Marcus Voss has already offered terms. Safe relocation. Neutral ground. Council outside Silver Ridge influence." I took one step toward him. "You would hand me to Marcus?" "I would hand you to whoever keeps you alive," he said. Rowan's voice cut in like a blade. "That arrangement will not happen." Elias turned fully toward him now, eyes sharpening. "Of course it will not. Because if Claire leaves, you lose the one thing propping up your rule." Silence. Ugly and immediate. My stomach turned. Elias looked at me, not Rowan, when he said the next part. "You really do not see it yet, do you? Your bloodline, your bond, your name. He is not protecting you out of loyalty. He is protecting what you make possible." I looked at Rowan so fast it hurt. He did not deny it. He just stood there, jaw locked, gaze hard, carrying that same terrible silence that always left room for the worst meaning. And suddenly the council chamber felt smaller than the Alpha House ever had. Because for the first time, I could not tell if I was the woman Rowan kept saving. Or the power he could not afford to lose. The storm hit just after dusk, hard and fast, like the sky had been waiting for the pack to split open before it chose a side. Rowan had taken me on a routine perimeter sweep with 2 patrol wolves trailing 50 yards back, supposedly because the bond had been volatile all day and he wanted to keep me away from the council chamber. I told myself I hated the arrangement. I told myself I hated him more. Then the sleet came sideways, the trail vanished under white, and the patrol got cut off near the ridge line. By the time we reached the emergency cabin tucked in the pines, both of us were soaked through and breathing frost. Rowan shoved the door shut against the wind and turned the deadbolt. We waited out. I dropped my wet gloves onto the table. "You say that like waiting has ever solved anything between us." He did not answer right away. He just stoked the old wood stove until heat finally started pushing back the cold. The silence should have felt sharp. Instead, it felt tired. Honest in a way Silver Ridge never allowed. I stood by the window, watching snow erase the world outside, and said the thing I had been choking on since the council chamber. "Did you keep me close because of what I could do for your rule?" Rowan looked up slowly. Firelight cut across his face, taking some of the steel out of it without making him soft. No, he said. I kept you close because every time you were left alone, someone tried to use you, take you, or bury the truth around you. I laughed once, but there was no bite in it. That is not the same as trusting me. He stood, crossed the cabin, and stopped just far enough away to leave me room to run if I wanted it. I know, he said quietly. I have made too many decisions for you. I know what that cost. I looked at him then. Really looked. No counsel. No audience. No Selena. Just Rowan Hale, tired enough to sound human. You always act like you are the only one carrying anything, I said. Do you know what it feels like to be handled like a problem people are afraid to name? His jaw tightened. Yes. That answer hit me wrong because it did not sound defensive. It sounded true. The storm slammed the cabin once, hard enough to rattle the glass, and for 1 second we both flinched toward each other before stopping. My pulse went strange. So did his. I could feel it through the bond now, steady but heavier than usual. I am tired, I admitted before I could stop myself. Not weak. Not helpless. Just tired of fighting every room I walk into. Something in his expression shifted. Small. Raw. I know, he said. And for what it is worth, I have never wanted you hurt. Not once. Not even when you hated me. The words landed too clean. Too deep. I should have turned away. I did not. We stood there in the gold heat of that little cabin, close enough to ruin ourselves, and when Rowan's hand lifted like he might touch my face, he stopped it himself. He dropped it to his side and stepped back first. Get some rest, Claire. I stared at him, breathing hard over nothing that had happened and everything that almost had. And somehow that felt even more dangerous. The softness from the cabin did not survive the ride home. Silver Ridge was already awake when we came down from the ridge, all cold stone, hot whispers, and people pretending not to stare. I should have known peace with Rowan would only ever last as long as no one else was watching. By noon, I was crossing the west corridor outside the council wing when I heard voices through the half-open door. Selena's came first, smooth and practiced. If the pack needs stability, then give them something they can understand. I froze. Rowan said something too low to catch. Elder Miriam answered for him. A formal arrangement would calm the council. The bond cannot remain this undefined. My pulse turned ugly. Formal arrangement. Stability. I moved closer before pride could stop me. Then I heard the line that did the damage. Marriage terms would end the speculation, Miriam said. Silence followed. Rowan did not refuse fast enough. He did not reject it loud enough. That was all it took. My stomach dropped so hard it felt like betrayal with a pulse. I backed away before anyone saw me and went straight outside, cold air hitting my face like punishment. Of course. Of course that was what the cabin had been. Not honesty. Not almost feeling. Just the alpha trying to keep his chaos manageable until he could package it for the council and put Selena where she belonged. By the time Rowan found me near the east wall, my anger had already rebuilt itself into armor. You should have just said it, I snapped before he could speak. His brows drew tight. Said what? I laughed once, sharp enough to cut. That I am a problem you are trying to solve with politics. He took one step closer. Claire, what did you hear? Enough. My throat burned, but I kept going. Enough to know the storm cabin meant nothing. Enough to know you still think you can decide what my life has to become. His jaw locked. You are misunderstanding this. Then explain it. I waited. He did not. Not in time. Not the way I needed. That silence chose for him. I looked away before he could see what it cost me. Do not worry, I said, voice flat now. I am done expecting honesty from you. I left him standing there and walked straight toward the south gate, where a message I should have burned an hour earlier was tucked inside my coat pocket. Marcus Voss. Midnight. If you still want the bonds severed, come alone. By then, I was angry enough to think a dangerous choice might still feel better than another careful lie. Marcus chose neutral ground the way men like him always did. A border chapel ruin no pack officially claimed, 20 miles south of Silver Ridge, just far enough to feel like betrayal before I even stepped out of the truck. He was already there when I arrived, coat perfect, smile sharp, like the night itself had been arranged for his convenience. You came, he said. I folded my arms and kept my distance. Say what you came to say. Marcus glanced at the bond mark on my wrist before he looked back at me. The severing ritual is real. But it is not gentle. My pulse kicked once, hard. Define not gentle. He did not soften it. If the bond has rooted deeply, breaking it can kill the stronger side. The words landed like ice water. Rowan's face flashed through my head before I could stop it, and I hated that my body reacted before my pride did. Marcus saw it. Of course he did. So now you understand, he said quietly. You are not trapped because Rowan wants you. You are trapped because your survival and his have become politically useful. I wanted to dismiss him. I wanted to call him a liar and walk away. Instead, I asked the one question I should not have asked. If I tell Rowan, what happens? Marcus's smile turned thin. He stops you. He cages you harder. He decides for you again. That part was believable enough to hurt. I did not tell Rowan. I carried that new fear back to Silver Ridge like contraband and tried to wear my face like nothing had changed. Then the pack gave me no room to breathe. An hour after dawn, alarms ripped through the compound. A supply route on the North Ridge had been hit. Patrols running. Orders flying. I caught Rowan in the yard buckling on his gear, already moving. What happened? I asked. He did not slow down. Rogues hit our transport line. Stay inside. I grabbed his sleeve before I could stop myself. Rowan. He looked down at my hand, then at my face. For 1 second, the yard disappeared. What? He asked, lower now. I almost told him. About Marcus. About the ritual. About the fact that leaving him had suddenly become a different kind of death. But pride won by a fraction. Nothing, I said, and let go first. His eyes narrowed like he knew I was lying, but patrol wolves were already calling his name. He left with the others, and I stood there hating the sound of my own silence. The attack should have ended at the ridge. It did not. Mid-afternoon, the bond snapped through me so hard I doubled over against the kitchen counter. Heat. Pain. A tearing pulse that was not mine. Rowan. Someone shouted my name, but the room had already gone thin around the edges. I pressed one hand over the mark, breathing hard, and felt it again. Not fear. Not mine. Injury. Real enough to steal the ground from under me. Dean reached me first. Claire. I looked up at him, throat tight, voice shaking in spite of me. Something happened to him. And for the first time since I met Marcus, the question was no longer whether I could break this bond. It was whether I could survive what happened if Rowan did not come back through it. Rowan did not come back standing. He came back on a stretcher just before sunset, pale, bloodless, and far too still for a man who usually filled every room by force of presence alone. The second they carried him into the infirmary, the bond hit me again, hard enough to make my knees threaten betrayal. Not the clean shock from before. This was heavier. Dirtier. Wrong in a way my body recognized before the healers said the word. Poison. Elder Miriam stepped into my path at once. You will stay out of this room. I stared at her like she had lost her mind. Move. Her mouth tightened. If his condition destabilizes the bond, your presence could make it worse. I could feel Rowan slipping anyway. Not in theory. Not in politics. In real time. He is fading, I said, voice already shaking. You can feel it too. She did not answer. That was enough. I went around her. Dean caught my arm for half a second, then let go when he saw my face. If you do this, he said quietly, there is risk. I looked straight at Rowan on that bed, jaw slack with pain, even unconscious, and made the choice before fear could. I am already in the risk. The healers had him surrounded, hands moving, voices low and urgent. None of it looked fast enough. I climbed onto the chair beside the bed, grabbed his hand, and pressed my marked wrist against his. The pain was immediate. Sharp. Then deep. Like opening a door inside my own ribs and letting a storm through it. Claire, Dean warned. I did not look at him. Hold the line, I whispered to Rowan instead. Do not you dare leave me with all this unfinished. The bond flared bright under our skin. Heat surged up my arm, through my chest, into my throat. Rowan's breathing steadied for 1 second, then hitched again, and I poured more of myself into the link because I did not know what else to do. The room blurred at the edges. Somebody said my name. Somebody told me to stop. I held on harder. Then Rowan's fingers twitched against mine. His lips moved. Barely. I leaned in so fast the chair leg scraped. What? His voice was rough as torn paper. I failed your father. Everything in me went still. Not killed. Not betrayed. Failed. The word split something open I had kept nailed shut for months. I looked at his face, at the strain carved into it even unconscious, and for the first time the guilt I had seen in him stopped looking like guilt over murder. It looked like grief. The bond eased a fraction. The healers rushed in harder. Dean pulled me back before I fell out of the chair. Hours later, when Rowan finally woke for real, the infirmary was quiet and dark. I was still there. Of course I was. He turned his head slowly, found me in the chair beside his bed, and frowned. Why are you here? I stared at him. You talked. His brow furrowed. No, I did not. The words landed cold. Clean. He remembered the injury. The patrol. The poison. But when I asked, what did you mean about my father, his face went blank in the worst possible way. Not guarded. Empty. Like whatever truth had slipped out of him did not belong to the waking man at all. The council came for Rowan before the poison had fully left his system. That was Silver Ridge. A man could bleed for the pack at noon and be politically dissected by sundown. I walked into the chamber with the taste of the infirmary still in my mouth and found Elder Miriam already standing at the center, council seals laid out on the table like judgment had paperwork. Rowan was there too, paler than usual, one hand braced against the chair beside him, refusing weakness the same way he refused everything else. This hearing concerns temporary suspension of Alpha authority, Miriam announced. The room tightened instantly. Selena stood near the side wall in pale blue, hands folded, face arranged into perfect concern. Elias was there as well, which told me exactly how rotten this was about to get. You cannot be serious, I said before anyone invited me to speak. Miriam looked at me over steepled fingers. Your bond is unstable. The border attack exposed internal leaks. The Alpha was injured under compromised command. The council must consider the safety of the pack. Rowan's jaw locked, but he did not argue. That made me angrier than if he had. Selena stepped forward right on cue. This is not personal, she said softly. Silver Ridge needs stability. I almost laughed. Nothing she had ever done in her life had been more personal. Then Elias added the knife twist. And with Marcus Voss offering support across the border, the council has alternatives. Alternatives. Men always loved that word when they meant taking something that was not theirs. Miriam turned to me at last. Claire Whitmore, because your bond is central to this matter, your testimony will be considered. My pulse kicked hard. There it was. The trap. If I spoke against Rowan, they would use me to break him. If I stayed silent, they would keep deciding my life without me. Every eye in that room landed on me. Rowan did not look at me at first. Then he did. Just once. No order. No plea. No rescue. That somehow mattered more than any of it. I stepped forward before fear could catch up. You want the truth? I said, and the chamber went still. The truth is Rowan Hale has protected me when this pack humiliated me, targeted me, cornered me, and tried to erase what I was before I even knew it myself. Miriam's expression chilled. Protection does not equal innocence. No, I said. But it does equal loyalty when everyone else was busy deciding whether I was worth more as a danger, a symbol, or a bargaining chip. Now Rowan was staring at me fully, something raw and shocked flickering under all that control. Good. Let him feel uncertain for once. I kept going. You do not get to call him unstable because this pack is terrified of what it cannot control. If Silver Ridge has a leak, find the leak. If it has cowards, look around this table. Silence hit hard after that. Ugly. Absolute. Miriam did not end the hearing. She postponed it. That was her version of losing gracefully. But when the room finally emptied, relief barely had time to breathe before it died. Because in Rowan's study, hidden inside a locked drawer I had no business opening, I found old documents stamped with his seal. My name. White Wolf lineage. Restricted knowledge. Years old. My hands went cold. He had known. He had known the truth about me for years. And suddenly saving his power in public felt a lot like handing my trust to a man who had built everything on silence. I should have left the drawer closed. That was the first lie I told myself. The second was that the documents did not matter because Rowan had still protected me. I stood in his study with the folder open in my shaking hands and felt every fragile thing I had said in that council chamber turn to glass under my feet. My name was everywhere. Claire Whitmore. White Wolf lineage. Restricted knowledge. Observation orders. Risk assessments. Dates going back years. Years. Longer than the bond. Longer than the attacks. Longer than any chance I ever had to choose what kind of life I was living. You knew, I whispered to the empty room. You knew the whole time. The door opened behind me before I could pull myself together. Rowan stepped in, still too pale from the poison, and stopped the second he saw the file in my hands. His face did not go blank. That would have been easier. It tightened. Small. Hard. Guilty. Claire. Just my name. No command. No denial. That made it worse. I turned on him with the papers clenched so tightly they bent. Do not do that. My voice shook anyway. Do not say my name like that fixes anything. He shut the door slowly, eyes locked on the folder. You should not have found those alone. I laughed, sharp and ugly. That is your answer? I took one step toward him. After everything? After I stood in that chamber and defended you? He did not flinch. I was trying to protect you. From what? I snapped. The council? Marcus? Or the truth that you decided what I was before I even knew it myself? He moved closer then, not enough to touch, just enough to make the room feel smaller. If they had known what you carried when you were younger, they would have taken every choice from you. I stared at him. So you took them first. Silence. There it was again. The brutal little gap where Rowan always seemed to think his reasons could stand in for my pain. I lifted one of the pages and shook it once. Observation orders, I said. Risk management. Restricted handling. Do you hear how that sounds? You did not protect me, Rowan. You monitored me. His jaw locked. I kept you alive. At what cost? The words came out raw. Do you even know what it did to me to grow up feeling wrong in my own skin while everyone around me looked at me like a secret they were tired of hiding? For the first time since I met him, Rowan looked like he had no clean answer. Good. Let him sit in that. Let him feel one piece of what he had left me carrying alone. I would do it differently now, he said quietly. But I would still have kept them from you. That was the moment something broke for real. Not because he lied. Because he did not. Because even now, even after all of this, part of him still believed love and protection gave him the right to choose my pain for me. I dropped the papers onto his desk and stepped back before my voice could crack. Then everything I gave you in that council chamber was built on a lie. His eyes flashed. Claire. I shook my head. No. You do not get to ask me for trust tonight. I turned for the door. Behind me, Rowan did not try to stop me. He only said one thing, low enough to hurt. I never lied about wanting you safe. My hand closed on the doorknob, cold and hard. Maybe not, I said without looking back. But you lied about letting me be free. I did not go far after leaving Rowan's study. Just far enough to breathe without feeling his walls around me. The old overlook above Silver Ridge had always been my place when I needed the world to stop pressing in. That night, the mountains looked like shadows stacked against the moon, silent and cold and older than every lie in this pack. I heard Rowan before I saw him. Not because of his footsteps. Because the bonds shifted the second he got close, like some disloyal part of me still knew him as safety even when my mind did not. If you came to tell me you were protecting me again, I said without turning, save it. He stopped a few feet behind me. No order. No command. Just his voice, rougher than usual. Then listen once before you decide what to hate. I almost walked away. Almost. But I had spent too many months choking on half-truths to run from a full one. I turned slowly. Rowan looked tired in a way I had never seen before. Not weak. Just stripped down. Your father knew what you were before anyone else, he said. White wolf blood had not shown in 50 years. The council did not want to protect that line. They wanted to own it. My throat tightened. He kept going. They planned pairings. Blood control. Future heirs they could shape into political weapons. I stared at him. And my father? Rowan's jaw locked once. He fought them. My father, Gideon, broke the first oath and tried to force the issue through council law. Your father refused. They met in secret the night he died. I got there too late. The wind cut between us, but I barely felt it now. Too late for what? His eyes held mine without flinching. Too late to stop the council from turning that meeting into a hunt. Too late to save him. Not too late to hear his last order. My chest hurt. He took one step closer. He made me swear I would keep your bloodline hidden. Even from you if I had to. He said if the pack learned what you were too soon, they would raise you as property, not a daughter. I wanted to throw the whole truth back at him. I wanted it to hurt him the way it hurt me. So you let me grow up alone instead, I said. My voice came out raw. You let me think I was broken. Pain flashed across his face. Real. Unhidden. Yes, he said. And that choice will cost me whatever. It should. But I made it because I thought hatred from you was survivable. Losing you was not. The words landed too deep, too clean, and I hated that part of me heard the truth in them. I believed him. That was the worst part. I believed him, and I was still furious. You do not get forgiveness because your reasons were noble, I said. He nodded once. I know. No defense. No push. Just that. I looked away first because if I kept staring at him, my anger might soften into something more dangerous. Then we are not fixed, I said. Not even close. Rowan's voice stayed quiet behind me. I did not come here to be absolved, Claire. I came because you deserved the truth from my mouth, not my silence. And somehow that hurt more than the lies had. The truth did not fix me. It only changed where the pain lived. The morning after the overlook, I told Rowan I needed distance, and for once he did not argue. He only nodded once and said, "Take it." That should have felt like respect. Instead, it felt like standing on the edge of something I still did not know how to name. All day Silver Ridge moved around me with that careful, watching silence people use when they think a woman is one wrong word away from breaking. By dusk, a sealed envelope had been left on my dresser. No crest. No signature. Inside was a single page bearing Rowan's seal and the words "Permanent Bond Mark Authorization." My blood went cold. Attached was a note in rough script. "He is moving before the council turns. If he marks you fully, you will never leave by choice again." I stared at the page until the letters blurred. Maybe it was forged. Maybe it was not. That was the problem with Rowan. The truth had finally come, but trust had not caught up to it. I found him outside the strategy room an hour later, issuing low orders to patrol wolves, face hard, voice controlled, every inch the alpha who still believed he could carry the weight of everyone's future on his own back. "Are you planning to mark me?" I asked. The question hit so hard he actually went still. He dismissed the patrol with one look and turned to me. "What?" I held up the paper. "Between us. Do not insult me by pretending you do not understand the question." His expression darkened when he saw the seal. "Where did you get that?" "Wrong answer." My pulse spiked instantly. "So it is real." He took one step closer. "Claire, listen to me." "No," I snapped. "You said I deserved truth from your mouth. Here is your chance. Are you about to take my last choice away because the council is getting nervous?" He did not answer fast enough. Maybe he was thinking. Maybe he was choosing words. Maybe he was trying not to say the wrong thing. I was already too far gone to care. That is what I thought. I turned before he could touch me, before the bond could betray me with one more pulse of warmth where anger should have been. My truck keys were already in my hand. Marcus had sent one last message at noon. "If you want this finished, come tonight." I had ignored it then. I did not ignore it now. Because even after truth, even after grief, even after Rowan finally showed me the wound beneath his silence, part of me still believed the most dangerous thing in my life was a man who loved me enough to choose for me again. Marcus's trap did not look like a trap at first. That was the clever part. The old treaty site sat quiet under a thin strip of moonlight, all broken stone and dead grass, like history had abandoned it on purpose. Marcus stood in the center of the ruin beside a circle carved into the ground, silver dust catching the light in lines too precise to be natural. "You came alone," he said, smiling like that proved something. I stopped 10 feet away and kept my hands loose at my sides. "You said you could finish this." He glanced at the bond mark on my wrist. "I can. But first, you need to understand what Rowan never would have let you choose." The air around the circle felt wrong. Too heavy. Too still. My pulse sharpened. "Then explain it fast." Marcus stepped aside, giving me a full view of the markings. "This is not a severing ritual in the way you imagined," he said. "It is a transfer rite. A claim. Ancient, legal, binding. Once activated, your bond to Rowan breaks and reforms under stronger authority." I stared at him. Then I laughed. Not because it was funny. Because if I did not laugh, I might break something with my bare hands. "So you lied." Marcus's smile did not move. "I adapted the truth. Rowan cages with protection. I offer structure with power." I looked at the circle again, at the careful geometry, at the thin silver chain lying near the center like a promise dressed as ownership, and every lesson Rowan had forced into my body through training came back at once. Control the room. Read the angle. Do not show panic before you know the exit. I let my shoulders drop. I let my voice go quiet. And if I say yes? Marcus stepped closer, pleased too early. Then the region stabilizes, your bloodline is safeguarded, and Rowan Hale loses the only leverage keeping him dangerous. There it was. Not me. Not safety. Power. I tilted my head like I was considering it and took one slow step toward the circle. Show me how it begins. Marcus's eyes flashed with victory. He moved to the edge of the markings and lifted his hand. Your blood here. My command there. Once the line closes, the claim takes hold. He should not have taught me that. The second he pointed to the keystone line, I moved. Fast. I kicked the silver chain across the dirt, dropped low, and slammed my heel into the weakest point of the circle exactly where he had shown me. The powder scattered. The pattern broke. The air snapped like a wire cut under tension. Marcus cursed and lunged, but I was already backing out of range, breath sharp, heart hammering, adrenaline cleaner than fear. You really should stop assuming I am the easiest person in every room, I said. His expression finally lost polish. Good. Let him wear something honest for once. Then the bond roared alive under my skin so hard I almost staggered. Rowan. Close. Furious. A second later, wolves crashed through the tree line around the ruin, patrol voices cutting through the dark, and Rowan himself hit the clearing like a storm with teeth. He saw the broken circle. Saw Marcus. Saw me still standing. And for the first time since this nightmare started, the look in his eyes was not just rage. It was fear over what I had nearly walked into and something harsher over the fact that I had not waited for him to save me first. Rowan reached me first at the treaty ruin, one hand locking around my arm, the other already turning me behind him like instinct had outrun thought. Are you hurt? He demanded. I should have answered. I should have pushed him off and reminded him I had shattered Marcus's circle on my own. Instead, all I could hear was the sound of wolves moving through the trees. Too many. Too coordinated. Marcus smiled through the chaos like the broken ritual had only been his opening move. You really thought this was about one girl and one bond? He called. Look around, Hale. Then the first alarm cry rose from the patrol line, sharp enough to freeze the blood in my veins. This was not a private trap anymore. It was an attack. By the time we got back to Silver Ridge, the pack was already in motion. Bells. Orders. Smoke at the north edge. Marcus's wolves had split and hit the outer roads, the storage cabins, the watch lines. Everything Rowan had been trying to hold together was being pulled apart at once. Get civilians to the lower shelters, Rowan barked. Seal the west gate. Nobody moves alone. He turned to me, eyes hard with the kind of fear he only ever wore as anger. You stay with Dean. No, the word came out before he finished. Rowan's jaw set. Claire. No, I said again. I am done being moved like fragile cargo while everyone else bleeds for choices tied to my name. For 1 second, the bond between us flashed hot and wild, almost like it agreed. Then another voice cut through the yard. Elias. My uncle stood near the supply shed with 2 patrol wolves at his side, and the look on Dean's face told me the truth a second before the words did. The route leaks. The archive fire. The treaty page. It was him, Dean said, low and stunned. Elias did not even deny it. He just lifted his chin and said, this pack was always going to tear itself apart over her. I simply backed the winning side. Something in me went cold. Clean. Final. Rowan started toward him, but the north wall shook with another impact and Selena ran into the square, hair loose, dress torn at the sleeve, nothing polished left in her face. The nursery house is still full, she said, breathing hard. If the fire reaches the east lane, they will be trapped. For the first time since I met her, there was no poison in her voice. Just fear. Real fear. Rowan split his attention in a way I had never seen before. Alpha. Protector. Man being asked to save everyone at once. Dean, take Elias into custody, he ordered. Selena, move the families now. Then he looked at me again, and I saw the exact moment he realized I was not going to step back. Claire. My name sounded different this time. Not as an order. As a warning. As a plea he hated needing. The bond mark on my wrist burned before I understood why. Heat surged up my arm, through my chest, into my throat, sharp and silver and alive. The air around me changed. Wolves nearby went still. Even Rowan did. I looked down at my hand and saw pale light threading beneath my skin like moonlight had found blood and chosen mine to live in. The white wolf was not sleeping anymore. And judging by the way the whole square suddenly stared at me, neither was the pack. The first thing I learned about white wolf power was that it did not answer to fear. It answered to choice. The square around me had gone dead silent, smoke drifting over stone, Marcus's wolves pressing the outer line, Silver Ridge caught between panic and collapse. My hand was still glowing. My pulse was not. For the first time in my life, something inside me felt awake instead of wrong. Rowan took one step toward me, careful now, like even he did not know if I would burn or break. Claire, he said, low and steady, do not let them define this before you do. That landed harder than I expected. Not because it was soft. Because it was not control. It was room. I looked past him to the pack staring at me like I had become a storm with a face. Good. Let them look. I was done shrinking so other people could feel powerful. Marcus stepped into the mouth of the square with blood on his coat and confidence still clinging to him like a disease. You see, he called. She was never meant to belong here. White wolf authority cannot be ruled by a pack already rotting from inside. The old fear should have come back then. The fear of becoming property. Symbol. Problem. It did not. I felt the bond at my wrist, hot and alive, but something larger moved under it now. Choice. My voice carried farther than it should have when I answered. You keep talking about authority like it can be stolen by the loudest man in the room. Marcus smiled. No. It can be claimed by the strongest. I lifted my hand, watched the pale light thread brighter beneath my skin, and realized the truth before I said it. Then that is why it will never answer to you. The air shifted. Wolves on both sides went still. Even the bond steadied, not because Rowan forced it, but because I stopped resisting what I was. I felt it then. Not just power. Alignment. My body. My blood. My will finally choosing the same direction. Marcus's confidence cracked first. Good. He deserved that. Then the moment turned in a way I did not expect. Rowan stepped forward into the open center of the square and, in front of the entire pack, dropped to one knee. Gasps hit the air behind me. Selena stared. Elder Miriam looked like the ground had betrayed her. Rowan did not look at them. Only at me. I will not claim what is not freely given, he said, voice carrying clean through smoke and silence. Not your power. Not your trust. Not your future. Choose, Claire. My throat tightened so hard it hurt. Months ago, he would have made the choice for me and called it protection. Now he was handing it back in front of everyone who had once watched me be humiliated. I was not ready to forgive him. Not yet. But I was done letting men like Marcus decide who got to stand beside me. I moved to Rowan's side, not behind him, and faced the square. I am not his possession, I said. And I am not yours to take. Then I looked straight at Marcus. But if you think I will let you turn my blood into your crown, you have not been paying attention. Once I stepped beside Rowan, the square stopped feeling like a place where things happened to me. It became a place where I could answer back. Marcus saw it too. His smile thinned. His wolves Shifted at the outer line, waiting for fear to do what force no longer could. Rowan rose from one knee and moved to my left, not in front of me, not behind me. With me. That mattered. More than I wanted to admit. Silver Ridge holds, he said, voice carrying over the smoke and chaos. Stand your line. This time, when the pack answered, they were not just following him. They were watching me. I lifted my hand again, let the white wolf light rise clean through my skin, and felt the panic in the square change shape. Not gone. Redirected. Look at them, I said, staring at Marcus. Your alliance is built on hunger. Mine is built on choice. The words landed harder than any threat. Wolves along Marcus's flank hesitated first. Then more of them did. The white wolf power moved strangely, not like a weapon, more like a truth forced into the open. It pulled at loyalty. Exposed fear. Broke the easy spell of borrowed authority Marcus had been wearing all night. Hold your ground, Marcus snapped at his own line, but the command no longer landed clean. Rowan stepped forward and added his alpha force to mine, not to overpower it, but to brace it. Command and choice. His strength. My will. For one impossible second, the whole square aligned. The outer attackers broke first. Some ran. Some dropped their eyes and backed away. Marcus looked around and realized too late that he was no longer leading a takeover. He was standing in the ruins of one. Dean's patrol moved on Elias at the same time, locking his arms behind his back while he shouted that he had only chosen survival. Rowan's voice turned cold enough to cut stone. You chose betrayal. Selena, ash streaked across her dress, stood near the shelter path with evacuated families behind her, staring at me like she did not know where to put me anymore. Good. Let that discomfort live with her. Let all of them live with it. By dawn, Marcus was stripped of standing before the regional council seal Rowan carried for emergencies, his men scattered, his claim broken in front of witnesses he could not threaten into silence. The attack was over. The fires were controlled. The children were safe. Elias was in chains. Silver Ridge still stood. And yet when the noise finally died, when the smoke thinned and the wolves stopped waiting for the next order, the strangest part was not victory. It was the quiet after. I looked at Rowan across the wreckage of one terrible night and felt the truth settle in with all the things still unresolved. We had saved the pack. We had broken Marcus. But the war outside us ending did not mean the distance between us had closed. Not yet. The morning after the attack, Rowan asked me to meet him in the old council garden behind the main house. No guards. No elders. No audience. Just frost on the stone path and a sky so pale it looked like the world had not decided whether to begin again. He stood beside the fountain with a small iron key in one hand and a leather folder in the other. What is this? I asked. He did not circle the truth this time. Your release. I stopped 3 feet away and stared at him. Rowan held out the key first. Your room at the Alpha House. Your files. Your restrictions. All of it ends today. Then he placed the folder on the fountain ledge between us. And if you still want the bonds severed later, I will not stop you. The words hit harder than any claim ever had. Because this was the first thing he had ever given me that did not come with a lock hidden inside it. I picked up the folder with numb fingers. Inside were signed orders dissolving every alpha restriction placed on me since the bond formed. No movement limits. No observation orders. No protective clauses dressed as law. Freedom, written in Rowan's hand. I looked up at him, throat tight. Why now? Rowan's expression did not harden the way it used to when he was afraid. It stayed open. Tired. Honest. Because if I say I love you and still keep deciding your life for you, then I have not learned anything. The bond pulsed once, warm and steady, like it was listening. Before I could answer, Dean entered the garden quietly and held out a second envelope. This was found in the last of your father's effects, he said. It is addressed to you. My hands shook before I even opened it. My father's handwriting was unmistakable. Claire, if you are reading this, then the truth has already cost more than I hoped it would. I read the letter standing there while the fountain whispered behind me and Rowan did not move an inch closer. My father wrote that Rowan had argued against his own blood, against Gideon, against the council, before any of this became war. He wrote that Rowan was the only son of Silver Ridge powerful enough to betray the future expected of him and choose my safety over his inheritance. He wrote, trust his heart before you trust his silence, because his silence will wound you, but it may still be the thing that keeps you alive long enough to hate him for it. I lowered the letter slowly, blinking hard against the sting in my eyes. The garden had gone very still. Rowan looked at me like a man who had already accepted whatever judgment came next. Good. He should have. I folded the letter with careful hands and held it against my chest, feeling grief, anger, relief, and something softer moving together in a way that no longer felt like weakness. You do not get instant forgiveness, I said. Rowan nodded once. I know. My voice trembled anyway. But for the first time, you are finally standing in front of me without trying to hold the door shut. He exhaled like that sentence hurt in the best possible way. Then he said nothing else. No plea. No argument. No pressure. Just room. And standing in that room, with my father's last words still warm in my hands, I realized the next choice would be mine alone. The rebuilt Founders Hall looked the same from a distance. Same stone. Same banners. Same polished floor where I had once stood alone while the pack watched me be broken. But this time, when I walked through those doors, nobody laughed. Nobody whispered loud enough to wound. They moved aside. Not out of fear. Out of recognition. Elder Miriam opened the gathering with a voice stripped of its old certainty. Rowan stood at the front in black, still, impossible to ignore. I felt every eye on me as I crossed the hall, but for the first time, it did not feel like judgment. It felt like witness. I stopped beside him, not behind him, and let the silence settle. Rowan was the one who broke it. Silver Ridge failed Claire Whitmore, he said, each word clear enough to leave no room to hide. The hall went still. I failed her too. Not by protecting her. By deciding alone what pain she had to carry and calling that love. The truth of it hit hard because he did not soften it. He did not ask the pack to excuse him. He did not ask me to. He just stood there and said it where everyone could hear. My throat tightened anyway. Rowan turned to me then, and the entire room disappeared. I cannot undo what my silence cost you, he said. But I will never choose your life for you again. There it was. Not a claim. Not a command. A vow built on the exact thing he had once refused to give me. Choice. I looked at him and let myself feel all of it at once. The humiliation. The fury. The nights I thought his protection was another cage. The truth that he had loved badly, stubbornly, and at times unbearably. The truth that I had hated him for reasons that were real. And the even more dangerous truth that somewhere along the way, I had stopped hating who he was. I took one step closer. I still hate what you did, I said, and a few people in the hall actually flinched. Good. Let them hear the whole thing. But I do not hate you. Rowan's breath caught. Small. Barely there. Human. I lifted my hand, looked at the bond mark glowing faintly at my wrist, then back at him. This bond began like a prison, I said. It stays only if it becomes a choice. Rowan nodded once. Then let it be your choice. It already was. I slipped my hand into his, not because fate demanded it, not because the council blessed it, not because the pack needed a symbol. Because I did. The bond answered softly. Warm. Steady. No pain in it now. No fear. Just truth. When we turned back toward the hall, we did it side by side. Equal. Scene. And when Silver Ridge bowed its head to us, I did not feel like the girl they had once humiliated. I felt like the woman who had survived them, chosen for herself, and finally walked forward without anyone forcing the direction.